So let's meet Dr. Ofer Levy. He's director of the Precision Vaccines Programme at Boston Children's Hospital. He's also a member of the advisory panel that recommended the US Food and Drug Administration approve 2 vaccines from BioNTech, Pfizer and from Moderna. Welcome to DW. Can you explain to us in layman's terms how it was possible to approve these drugs so quickly without cutting corners?
Thank you for that. Typically, vaccine development across history, if we look at all the vaccines that have been developed across human history, typically took 10 to 20 years. Obviously, that was not a timeline that was acceptable given this terrible pandemic and the daily death toll that your viewers were just hearing about. Luckily, a technology called messenger RNA or mRNA technology had been maturing, has been worked on for 10 years. And when the pandemic hit some months ago, companies such as Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna were positioned to leverage this technology and rapidly get clinical studies up and running. That said, there was a very vigorous process, a rigorous process. I sat on the approval committee. I looked at all the briefing documents. That data, that safety data and efficacy data for the vaccine were provided and independently analyzed by the United States Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, and independently analyzed and reviewed by the committee of experts on the Vaccine Advisory Committee that I served on. And we voted overwhelmingly in favor of recommending to FDA to issue these emergency use authorizations given this terrible pandemic. I reviewed the safety data. It was rigorous and provided all the information we would ask for regarding vaccine safety.
And you said it was an overwhelming vote, but not unanimous. What were the concerns that the holdouts had?
Thank you. For the first vote, the first vaccine was Pfizer. I believe the vote was 17 in favor versus 4. Those who didn't vote in favor obviously should best speak for themselves, but the discussion, the concern had been about inclusion of 16 and 17-year-olds in the recommendation. I voted in favor, bearing in mind that there was some safety data provided in this age group, but some others took the position that since younger individuals are less likely to develop severe COVID, that maybe the benefit risk wasn't as strong, but there was no particular safety signal or safety concern for 16 or 17-year-olds. And it's my view as a pediatrician that eventually a potential solution here for the world is to establish safety of these coronavirus vaccines in children. I mean, most of vaccines in the world are given during childhood. Most of the world's infrastructure for delivering vaccines is in childhood, as parents know. And so obviously we need the studies to show safety in the younger age groups. Those studies are now ongoing, but I believe in the long run that will be part of the solution here.
And so the US FDA has now approved these 2 COVID vaccines. Is one more likely to be more suitable for a particular demographic or situation than the other?
Thank you for that. The Pfizer-BioNTech got an emergency use authorization, or EUA, for 16 years and up. So for the 16 and 17-year-olds, the Pfizer vaccine will be the one. Moderna was for 18 years and up. Both companies are now going to do studies in younger individuals, for example, 5 years to 20 years of age. We're going to learn more. As you know, there's some differences in terms of how these vaccines have to be stored. The Pfizer vaccine is delicate. It needs to be in deep freeze, negative 80 degrees Celsius. That's possible, but expensive. These are expensive freezer systems that exist in sophisticated biomedical centers, but don't exist across the globe, right? The Moderna one, negative 20 degrees Celsius for your viewers. That's approximately the temperature of your home freezer. That's a little more practical, but still, neither of these vaccines are great. 95% efficacy, that's a great number. They're safe, but they're likely not going to be the global answer in resource-poor countries where that kind of freezer infrastructure doesn't exist.
OK. Let's talk about the rollout of this vaccination programme, because as I understand it, each state will organise its own distribution and vaccination programme. So does this mean that they will have to compete for supplies, or who will regulate that?
Right. So there's a process through Operation Warp Speed with General Perna from the U.S. military, who is leading that effort, that federal effort. in coordination with the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, and, as you allude to, the local state governments. And so vaccines are distributed to each state in the U.S., and then those states will set guidelines in consultation with CDC about priority groups such as high-risk healthcare workers and elderly and long-term facilities. I'm an infectious disease consultant. I see patients in the hospital, and therefore I received my Pfizer vaccine last Thursday, and on the 7th of January, I'll be receiving my second dose.
Right. Can we have a quick word as well about the situation in Britain, where scientists have now identified, it seems, 2 coronavirus variants that are more transmissible than the one we've almost become used to. What's going on in the UK? Are they unlucky? Are they careless? Or perhaps they're conducting better testing?
Yeah, so there's more to be learned about that. I think part of it, as you allude to, is that the British are probably the best in the world at the genetic testing of the virus. They're doing a lot of it, and they're doing it well. And so they're picking up this nuance that as the virus spreads, its genetic material, changes. And so variants have been detected. There are reports that these variants may spread more easily between individuals. That's suspected. I don't think it's quite proven yet, but that's suspected. We don't know yet if they cause more severe disease, maybe not. And sometimes, in general, among viruses, if they spread better, sometimes they cause less disease. And then, of course, the bigger question is, will the current crop of coronavirus vaccines protect against these variants? The short answer is we think the answer is yes, thankfully. But again, we have to keep an eye on this, and we don't have all the data we want to have. We are going to have to keep an eye on coronavirus variants across the globe, not just in Britain. And we're going to have to keep track of vaccine efficacy. How well does the vaccine prevent COVID disease in different parts of the globe, and match it up with the viral strains that are circulating?
That's very clear. Thank you for joining us, Doctor. Dr. Ofer Levy from the FDA Advisory Panel.